Welcome to the IFM Healthcare webinar, Test, Tag and Trace. My name is Peter Templeton, and this is the second in our series of webinars illustrating the IFM's work in the healthcare sector. The agenda for the webinar is as follows. I'll say a few words about the Institute for Manufacturing and its work in the healthcare sector. My colleague Veronica Martinez will lead the main presentation of Test, Tag and Trace. Veronica will introduce colleagues involved in the project who will also present. And then we'll move on to have a question and answer session, and we invite your questions both during the presentation and during the Q&A session. Next. About the IFM's work in healthcare. Well, the Institute for Manufacturing is part of the Department of Engineering at Cambridge. We have about 300 people conducting research, education, and practical application, as well as about 120 taught course students. Our work spans management, and that's the management of innovation, the management of service, the management of operations, for example. It spans government, innovation policy, as well as hard technologies. This research has led to structured methods and technologies which have been applied in the healthcare sector for about the last 15 years. And just to give a few examples, in research and innovation, we have worked with research funding charities to help them define a strategic vision and a roadmap to realize that vision, and also with university researchers and research translation specialists to identify how to take promising underpinning research and turn that into innovations and then into practice. Within the pharmaceutical area, we work extensively in pharmaceutical supply, both in primary and secondary production, and also clinical trials. We work in manufacturing strategy for pharmaceuticals and also retail automation for pharmaceuticals. And also within the healthcare operations with hospitals, we've done some very interesting work with Addenbrooke's on care pathways for pediatric brain trauma, and most recently, patient flow modeling and resource allocation for the COVID-19 pandemic. Next, please. So before we start, if you could pose your questions via the question and answer function at the bottom of the screen, and also if you have any technical or support questions, use the chat functionality, which is also at the bottom of the screen. And then following the webinar, we will send out a recording over the coming days. Veronica.
Thank you, Peter. So let me just give you a glimpse on how we got started in this. So what is the rationale for being involved in this project? So here at the Cambridge Service Alliance, we are involved in a larger project called the OMS, the On-Body Therapy Manufacturing. It's a wearable device that is developed. The aim is to develop this wearable device to cure cancer in children's blood. But we are not the only university in this. So as you can imagine, we partner with another several universities, and we have different expertise. Our expertise is very diverse. As part of this developing a wearable device, an important element of this is the traceability of the wearable. So our interest and rationale that we engage into the Test, Tag and Trace project was very much to build this ecosystem of understanding more about the traceability of this element and learn from those projects. So we know and we have observed that there are a number of positive cases rising up, but at the same time, we want to keep the economy moving. With this project, Test, Tag and Trace, we know that we want these two things, which are a little bit different, but at the higher level, this is what we see in the news. But at the employee level, this is a little different. So we see that there is a lot of uncertainty regarding the best practices of how to make and how to create an employee safety around the working environments. But this is largely uncertain because there is a lot of inaccurate data going around. So our approach is very much based to provide a visibility with the use of set conditional logics and a rule-based systems with some IoT technology attached to this. We see that this is an approach, and this approach is worth to taking a closer look. And now my colleague Mansa is going to explain us how the system works.
Thank you, Peter and Veronica. It is important to mention that we are trying to do, what we are trying to do here is to provide a solution which is not only for the duty of care for the employees, but also a solution that allows businesses to continue operating. We have been involved in the creation of a platform that uses accurate employee location data as its input. The platform has the ability to provide near real-time feedback to users in accordance with the user-defined conditional logic rule base. The platform also provides the ability to view historical patterns of movements and interaction to identify threat scenarios, and enables integration of external data such as test results to the user configurable rule base. We have referred to this platform-based approach as test, tag, and trace. Next, please. The platform follows the MVC, Model View Controller-based architecture. Data for the model is provided from tags and hubs. View is the application and its interfaces. Controller is the logic engine. The logic engine is an important element of the architecture. For COVID-19, it is clear that there is uncertainty regarding best practice guidelines, and within different industries, we can state that one size does not fit all. Therefore, when considering the architecture, we ensure that rules can be applied in a flexible manner. The rules can consider things such as allowed distance between employees, the time they can spend together, the formation of groups of employees that are allowed to mix, and other factors of importance such as cleaning, decontamination of communal areas, and so on. Next, please. Not only does the platform allow us to manage adherence to rules, but it also provides us with the opportunity to access useful data to answer some research questions. It is important to understand the impact of time in proximity with co-workers. Also, we need to assess the effectiveness of group formation through more research. In terms of adherence to process management sequences, such as self-distancing and testing, it is important to be able to monitor this and see how the employees are actually adhering to this. Are they following the rules correctly? As human behavior factors is something which is going to impact this process very much so. For example, in manufacturing, the employees' focus is mainly on completing a certain number of tasks in a certain amount of time, and not necessarily on taking a break to wash their hands on a regular basis. And therefore, understanding how people are adapting to these changes is important. Another factor is that gathering some evidence on the impact of densities in communal areas such as lifts and canteen is also very important. It's not just how you maintain the density, but also linking these things with regimes such as cleaning and sanitizing is important. And finally, how to provide effective feedback to the end user, because that also needs consideration and research. what is the best way of providing that information to try and get people to make changes? So there are future research challenges that we are hoping to address in the near future. Next, please. In terms of the applications, one thing that we realized speaking to companies is that because there are such uncertainties around COVID-19, the COVID-19 situation has been used as an addition to applications that can be provided with the same infrastructure. They're looking at things like inventory management, smart building, and asset management, and so on, all using the same underlying technology. In the past few months, a number of industry trials have already started using this platform with major global companies in pharmaceutical, Industry 4.0, supply chain and logistics, and food processing. Next.
Yeah, in terms of the technology, we've been involved, my company System Loco Limited, and we worked with the University of Cambridge on considering how we can look at the devices to feed the data into the system. And through consultation with companies that we were engaged with, there were a number of factors that were considered. Importantly, there were usability challenges. So making sure that the units are small and fit for purpose. And that also led to discussions about the cost and how the devices are being used. So for instance, with a lot of technology, if the battery life is too short, you have a lot of issues with having to reassociate a device every morning with an individual. And that introduces, again, costs. So it's not just the cost of the device, but the cost of the use, the maintenance and the service, the association, that all had to be considered. We then also had to look at some of the challenges with integration. So there's a lot of different testing sort of solutions out there right now. Initially, it was the antibody testing and the swab testing that was being considered. There are different manufacturers and different companies providing solutions, and we were trying to make sure that that data could be used and effectively tied in with the data that we were feeding into the system. Below are a few of the form factors that were considered. As Massa said on the previous slide, different industries sort of like to have different things for different reasons. So the one on the left was actually a strap that was built for the bicep. And this was for food processing, where actually you can't have moving parts and things getting involved. This would be worn underneath an apron. Feedback mechanisms for that type of device would be vibration rather than light. The one in the middle was designed to be able to accept a card like an ID card that would be provided to individuals, and that could slot in, and it could have lights that light up if in case of events such as self-distancing, or if you're in the wrong area, or and we're mixing with a group of employees that you should not be mixing with. And finally, the one on the far right was our initial and device, which is dual purpose. So the actual tag is used for asset tracking as well, but also it's also attached to an ID card to enable people to be located to within 30 centimeters. So the technology used is a combination of UWB for positioning purposes, but also we have BLE tags, which also get used by the same reader infrastructure, which doesn't provide the same level of accuracy, but it's lower cost. And for all of these, the battery life we're able to achieve is up to 5 years. Finally, as mentioned as well, there are other applications such as smart buildings that are being considered. And we looked at the fact that the hubs themselves, which are being used to identify location results from these tags, could also include sensors such as air quality, light, temperature, humidity, and providing additional data which could be used by the companies that are using the technology to fulfill other business needs. Thank you.
Thank you. So this leads us to our conclusion. So what we have observed for the initial implementations of this system is that we have observed from different parts of a theoretical lens. So from the agency theory perspective, we see that the principal, which is the employer, and the agent is the employee. We see an alignment that both is in the most intrinsic benefit of both parties to use a system like this. So we have seen that there is a kind of acceptance to a certain extent, and here I wanted to highlight certain extent because there are some, I will move and explain that, but we see that from the agency theory perspective, generally employee and employer, from this theoretical perspective, they are not aligned. In this particular, the use of this system, there is an intrinsic benefit of both parties that create the alignment. So employee and employer, they are interested to learn in order to keep everybody safe. From the organizational behavior, as Masa mentioned and as Roj mentioned as well, we have a certain elements of employee behavior. So with the application of this system, we better understand what is the behavior of our employees, when and how they are meeting, to what extent we can see what are the most effective time that they are meeting. We can see and locate where they are, and also we can protect them to be and complying within the rules that the organization have. Particularly when we talk about employee behaviors, this system, as Reyes mentioned, is not just for this test, tag, and trace in this pandemic, but what this solution is providing is that hopefully beyond this pandemic, if the company acquire system like this, they can be continuously used in other parts of the organization, namely supply chain or with interaction with other systems to enhance productivity or employee satisfaction. We see that an important part of the behavior is governance. And governance is an important part of the system because this system has to be programmed. So I started to say that we are interested to be an ecosystem of different expertise in order to make this work. And it's the same when we have the application and implementation of a system like this. So the governance, we need people who knows about the processes and how the organization or the pharmaceutical or the bank or wherever we are or the office has to behave, what is the production who has to be in the office. And this is part of bringing this element of scheduling people when they are needed. But this is with a very clear mind that we have the duty of communicating clearly what we wanted to achieve. And this governance, this part of the system gives you a governance in order to create and schedule people. We cannot be all at the same time in the same place, as we know. But we can schedule the interaction of people, and we can manage through a fair communication to everybody, because it is in our best interest for everybody to be happier, to be healthy, and to be safe. And this leads us with the benefit and challenges. So we have seen a lot of benefit from this system. We have seen that people are safely working. We have seen that people are more reassured that they are working and operating in the same environment, and they can be productive if they want to work from their workplaces. But this comes with a challenge as well, and this is what we have observed. There are dynamic routines and rules that continuously go and move, as Suresh and Mansa mentioned before. So these dynamic routines will start to move as the governmental regulation change or rules and regulations. We can, and the system has this flexibility to adapt to the changes, either if the change coming from outside, let's say policy making, or if the change come from inside, depending on how the organization is behaving, how safe it is for the employees to be. So this is the benefits that we have seen. They are clear, and there are real benefits from this approach, but there are some challenges, and there are the trade-offs of working with this flexibility and programming it. Finally, the main conclusion of this, or one of the main conclusions, is that by implementing a system like this, you are creating an ecosystem in building and maintaining a system that works for your organization. And a lovely part of this is that you can customize this to your particular needs of your organization. Name it if it's in Canada, name it if it's in Japan, if it's in Germany, if it's in the UK, you adapt it to the culture of your own settings. And thank you. So what we are going to do is we are going to move to the second part of this webinar. And in the second part of this webinar, we are going to have a panel discussion. We have Mansa, we have Denise, and here I would like to take the opportunity to introduce Denise Felden. And Denise, I wanted to give a proper introduction to Denise. Denise is an expert in internet governance and was invited by the German Federal Ministry to participate in the Federal Crisis Committee for Corona Management. Denise recently became the political advisor in the German National Network of University Hospitals for Pandemic Management. It's a pleasure to have Denise. We have Suresh, and Suresh has a lot of expertise in the development and the use of IT and digital technologies. As I mentioned, Mansa has an expertise in computer science, and myself. So if you have any questions, and we have seen that we have a few questions coming. So we are going to take the question, put your questions in the bottom of your screen. You will see a tab there where you can input your questions. We will pick up your questions and the question will be answered by the panelists. And I have the first question that will go. And let me to start this panel discussion with the first question. And the first question goes for Denise. Denise, as a political advisor, does this kind of digital pandemic management system work in the German culture and society?
Thank you for that question, Victoria. So as I understood from your speeches and all I know about this technology, it's able to adapt to the cultural and legal requirements in each country and culture. And so from that point of view, I would say, yes, there is a good chance that this system can be applied in also our culture here in Germany. But there are some issues, as you also mentioned before, Victoria, there is acceptance to a certain extent. And the same we can see in Germany, because our culture is not very open or used to share data with other people. So when I talk about data, I mean in the personal data, the data about the specific location of one person. This is one thing. We are not used to do this because we focus on our privacy very much. This is one thing. When it comes to the culture, it's reflected in our law. And so the major difficulty I would see here is also open to a solution. It's open to political communication between a company and researchers that develop such a system. And they have, I think now from the German point of view, I would say the duty to explain what you are doing, to explain the technology better so you can build trust in the communities and more understanding, because people in politics and maybe in public institutions, they still have a kind of tiny lack on digital literacy. So this is a bridge you have to take. That's what I would say.
Thank you very much for answering that question, Denise. It was very good. The next question, it goes to Suraj. Suraj, can you tell us more about the tag, please, and the technology that it is underpinning this system, please?
Yeah, sure. The actual architecture that we showed, and I think it was brought up in the slides earlier on, it's been designed so it can be operated on-prem and off-prem. So effectively, all the rules, all the solver, even the servers that we use can be used within the company's own domain. So it can be an on-premise solution. The technologies that we've looked at developing as a company are focused on how we can have a secure IoT effectively, how we can have IoT technology that takes into consideration authentication end to end. And we've built also technology that enables us to get quite a long battery life. So traditionally we've looked at both BLE and also UWB for communications, and we use both technologies for positioning. The way that both technologies work in the way that we've built the technology is, rather than doing something like what they call a round trip delay, or working out where a location is based on messaging going backwards and forwards, we work the tags so that they transmit for a very, very short period of time and never receive. So we're able to extend the battery life of the tags, and we try and have the difficulty in terms of the processing happening at the hubs and at the solver where they're powered. So we've managed to get small devices that can last for many years through this approach, and that works quite well for these applications, because often it is the battery life in these technologies which can cause issues with having to replace tags or having to have reassociation done on a daily or weekly basis, which means that the device becomes too expensive and impractical for use. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think that that was very comprehensive answer. Denise, there is another further questions that a panelist asked, and here is a question for not only Denise, but if Denise can tackle it first, then we can move on and complement Denise maybe if it's needed. The question is, what are the benefits and challenges in implementing it? Can we start with Denise and then we can move to the other panelists if they have a point of view on this, please?
Yes, so from my point of view, as I said before, the major challenges would be to cope with the legal system we have in Germany, and mostly with the culture we have in our society. So a culture which is focused on privacy, and where you have to build trust in the people that are, so that they are able to understand the technology and how this technology benefits their personal life. And here comes one point I want to underline. It's focused on the COVID-19 pandemic, because from my point of view, this pandemic changed something already also in our culture. People today are more open to adapt things, technology, devices that can help them to cope with the pandemic and to transfer their lives into the new normal, how we call this here in Germany. So a life under the conditions of a pandemic. And these 2 points, I think, are the major points to tackle. So the culture and the openness right now in the society to help each other and to help the society to go through these times of pandemic. Thank you.
So Roj, do you want to add something else to Denise? Thank you, Denise.
I agree a lot with what Denise has said, and we've seen that as well. I mean, in the UK, you have a lot of trade unions, and in the past, having a technology where you can say we can locate individuals is not really accepted. I think what has to be done even still is to make sure that the individuals know that they're protected, that the information provided is only being used for their benefit as well as the company's benefit, to make sure that if there is an infection, it can be maintained and tackled quickly. And there are approaches that have been looked at, I think, that are well known, where you can pseudo-anonymize the data and only effectively unlock the data when there is an event that needs to be explored. So I think privacy is still one of the big issues and barriers to be overcome. And a lot of that is, like we said, there are technology ways to tackle these problems, but the main issue is having the understanding provided, the education to the employees to be able to say, look, this is how you're going to be protected, this is how your data is going to be used, and that is very important, I think, in terms of getting the solution out there.
Thank you very much to both. And I think that you touching the next question from one of our panelists, one of our attendees. One of our attendees asked the question which you partially you answered to this. And he said, how do you ensure the compliance of general data protection regulation while using the tag? So you already talked about that. From the research perspective, what we have seen, historically, we have been trying to use tags in order to improve productivity in many locations. What we have observed globally is that pre-pandemic, people were very, very much adverse to the idea of putting some tax into the employees. And yeah, the link with the unions has been well documented in literature. However, what we observe is that from culture to culture, it was a little bit of a difference. So we saw that some researchers in Japan, they were able to do it because the rules and basically how they were explained that the data was used was more open and clear to them rather than the culture that we have in Europe. So I think that what Soroj mentioned, to have a clear idea, a clear governance of how we will be using the data is very important. And I think that Denise also mentioned that. Thank you very much for that question. We answered another one. Another question that will go for the panel is, how do you ensure the user acceptance? So we have covered the part of GDR, but how do you ensure that in practice? Can you tell us and share this experience with our attendees, please? Shall we get started with Denise, moving to Suraj, and then Masa, if possible?
Okay, so from a political communication point of perspective, I would say it's all about how you frame something you want to implement in a political system or in a culture and a society. So it all comes down to how do you educate people, first thing. Second, how public authorities communicate about specific topics, technology, and privacy, and how the public discussion is going on. So these two points can change also on ongoing public discussions. We've seen this here in Germany when it came back in March, April, we were discussing about implementing an COVID app, a monitoring app for the spread of the virus. And very soon a big discussion started here in Germany about the technology and how they set it up. And then the government stepped in and they said, okay, let's stop it here. We refocus our project. We start to work with other institutions, and we've heard you, we've listened to you, and now we are changing the system. And one month later, the new app came up, developed by SAP. And the government went out and said to the public, here we now have an app. It's not an app from the government. It's done by a private company. So they started to build trust in the technology. They said, we are not responsible for this. We are not going to collect the data. So this was something the public was asking for. And in a second step, they received so many downloads during the first week. So they today can say, okay, this was a success. So this is a perfect example how you can educate people and change a discussion about a technology.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and from a technology point of view, what we've seen is we've had a lot of consultation sessions with staff. So a bank that we work with that's looking at this technology across Canada, they've done trials to prove the technology, but then they've also got a lot of sessions with the employees to explain to them what is happening with the data, what the benefits would be for them. And in general, I think it comes down again to the sort of understanding that, I mean, it's what benefits it's going to provide to the individual. And the usability side of this, I think there was another question on usability, is that we've tried to make it such that the technology is transparent almost to the end user. So in the cases, and then we've had devices which enable feedback, but also devices which are completely passive with respect to feedback, but it just creates a historical record that can be looked at in the case of an event. And that's actually proved to be very, probably more accepted than ones which buzz and bleep and when you're too close to employees.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's something that people understand, that obviously it's for their benefit as well as the company's benefit to have sort of guidelines adhered to. I think the concern is that it's not being used for monitoring how well someone's working, but just to make sure that if there is an event, that we can make sure that that the right people are approached, and we don't have to close the entire factory just because there's been an outbreak. We can put rules and procedures in place to try and segregate the staff and reduce any potential disruption.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. The next question, Masa, sorry, would you like to comment on this?
Not really. So I think Surush and Denise covered it all.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it would also be advantageous to have it as a future research question to work with the end user to understand how then they would accept the technology. So there's a lot of work to be done. So thank you.
Exactly. Thank you very much, and this will help us to the next proposal, maybe. Very good. We have a next question, and this is more technical question. How precise, and this is from one of our attendees, how precise are the tags in determining if the users are 1, 2, or 3 meters distance? And can they be used for social distancing? Who wants to take that one?
I can take that one. So the UWB tags, the accuracy they provide is around 30 centimeters. It does depend on the accuracy in which the infrastructure can be positioned as well. So typically we're talking 30 to 50 centimeters in terms of accuracy, which can be used obviously to identify social distancing. The BLE tags are really designed to provide a room level location. But in certain companies, I think what we've seen is actually the accuracy and the social distancing is not what they're just looking for. It's the processes, because in certain industries, you accept the fact that, well, we're going to have a group of people that might actually be working at close quarters, and they'll be sharing goods or equipment that they need to use. And it's not practical always to have all of that sanitized before the next person touches it. So it's having that sort of, even at a room level, knowing that these people are the ones that are forming this little cluster or this little group is helpful, because then that means that if there is an outbreak, we can identify that it limits the group which could have been affected, the ones that need to be tested and probably need to isolate until those test results are available. So, so in summary, I think we can have accuracies down to 30 centimeters, but accuracy is not always the most important requirement.
Thank you very much. And just to remind you that part of this technology, we have EPSRC, the government funding, if you want to see from research. EPSRC, one of the main messages when we are developing digital technology is to make it low cost, low weight, and trying to be precise. And here is what we heard from Suresh, that the precision, sometimes you have to have certain trade-offs, but we have taken into account all these elements that EPSRC takes as priorities when developing digital technologies, and these are shown here, which is fantastic. Thank you. We have more questions, so I will go to the next question. And the next question is, what kind of end user feedback do you think will be effective in reshaping or reinforcing safe employee behaviors? Who wants to take that one to start with?
I think it's, no one seems to want to answer that question.
Okay.
So from an end user, I think we're actually looking at it, and with COVID in particular, things are changing, it seems, every day, from government rules to what different companies in different countries are looking to implement. and it also depends on the manufacturing industry itself, and even the size and the shape of the buildings, whether you're in a big wide factory or if you're in a tower block. So we're sort of seeing, and this is partially why the flexibility in the system is really important, because you end up having different potential issues based upon different in different places. So if we're talking about a tower block, it can often be the communal areas such as the lift, which need to be considered. What are the queues there? Can we sort of stagger when people come to work, and how people from one floor use the lift at one time, it gets cleaned in between use, to different factories and different environments where there are different concerns. So I think from an end user, we've seen very valuable feedback come in, and it is often a process of what I would call co-innovation between the technology developers and the end users that sort of come up with the right answer for their industry and for their particular premises. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. One thing that I would like to add is that when we start looking at employee behaviors, is very much is the role of not only the employees or the role of identifying and analyzing the data, but is this conversation what it is more important and what is more valuable? So we have observed in this and in other cases that having this open conversation will lead you to a better enhancement of happiness around the work environment, that you feel safer or more productive, but it's having this conversation. So we have seen that some organizations implemented technologies like this, and then it's not you have it right or wrong from the beginning, but it's having this conversation. You will arrive to the end point where you want it to be, but it's about people management, it's about people skills, it's about teamwork. That is what we have observed. There is another interesting question that I think that will go for Denise, but maybe you will correct me. This is from one of our attendees, and he said, to what extent can this type of tag trace technique be accepted to address modern slavery and human trafficking across a given supply chain? Examples? I haven't thought about that. Denise, do you have, I don't know if you guys have thought about that. It's a very good question. Do you want to have it a go, Denise? And if not, we will try to answer it to our best knowledge.
So I think it's a very, very, very good and important questions. And I haven't thought about that in relation to this specific technology, but here in Germany, we have a discussion about the supply chains, and we are about to discuss a new law. We want to track where the products are coming from, and so to Germany, and so this law is right now in Parliament and subject to discussion. And I think, yes, we can use modern technology to monitor such developments. For example, let me give you an example which is quite interesting. It's a totally different technology, but it's related to a group of not people but animals in this case. And a new modern technology firm said, okay, we want to apply our technology to save these animals, which is quite surprising because this company was Hensoldt. Hensoldt was the former military part of Airbus, as far as I know, and they are still working in the military field. They are developing technology for this kind of use. And only 1 day or 2 days ago, they decided to deploy their technology in the bushes of Africa to save elephants and lions. So yes, this kind of technology can be applied for such things and issues and challenges in society. That's what that's my first idea.
Thank you very much. Shall we move on, or any one of the panelists wanted to add something to this answer? Fantastic answer. Thank you, Denise. Let's move on. We have plenty of questions. Maybe it will be worth. Thank you for that answer. Very, very interesting to hear that we can save elephants and other animals. Very good, very pleased with that. The next question we have is, could this technology interfaces with test results? And if so, how? Very interesting question. Denise, do you want to have the first go and then we can pass the ball, or who wants to have the first go?
Maybe Surush, so I can follow up, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean we've discussed interfaces with test results, and there's been a couple of companies that we've worked with. There's a new company that's come up with a test in the UK recently called IABRA, which I think last weekend they've made an announcement of having tests which can give results back within 20 seconds. And there's a lot that's happening here. And importantly, I mean, we've got APIs that can be fed into the system for test results, but it needs integration work to be completed. It's with at the moment that we're sort of seeing the tests which we currently know of are mainly done by the government here in the UK, and they're normally fed back to the individual, and it's the individual that will then report that through to the workplace, and then they'll be looking at the data. So the interface is not automatic. But I think if companies bring on a test which is completed on site, and this is what a few companies are looking at with the testing, is to enable that to happen, then I think for sure we can obviously enable that integration to be more automatic at that point as well.
Thank you. Denise?
Yes. I want to add something here, because back in March and April, when we started with the pandemic management here in Berlin, from the side of the government, we recognized something, and that was that all our data about the infections were too old. So the today well-known RKI received the data from all the public authorities across the country, but all those data, they were 10 days old the moment they were received by the RKI. So that's not fast enough. That's what we recognized very soon. And for that, it's very helpful to have a technology that is able to connect to the testing field, so that you can gather information much faster. So back in April and March, our public authorities, they collected all the data about testing and test results on papers. So they just collected papers, and they sent those papers to the next point of where someone was sitting who was responsible. So this took 10 days actually. So yes, this kind of technology can very much help with that, gaining data much faster and be more precise in the end.
Thank you very much, Denise. Thank you. It looks like we are learning as we're moving. We are learning, and it's not just a question of one or two companies or one or two governments. I think that what we are seeing is that we haven't been prepared for this. Nobody has been prepared, but it's the trying, the piloting and trying things to make it and adapted to it. Thank you, Denise, for that. We have a question, and I think that this might be for Mansa. Mansa, from your perspective, you have worked a lot about the implications of digital technology in human behavior. Can you tell us from the human behavior perspective, what are the main implications when people start to look at something that they haven't had, like a tag like this? What are the things that people will be worried about, and what are the things that they will start looking around?
So I think the main thing that I've come across in terms of human-computer interaction is the trust issue. So I think introducing any new technology, you have to explain the technology properly to the end user, so they can establish that trust and understand what's happening to their data, the things that Denise and Surush previously covered. It's just establishing that understanding and the trust between the end user is very important in terms of human-computer interaction. But then also, just explaining how the system would benefit, not just them, but also the bigger picture in terms of employment and their company. It's just the knowledge and establishing that trust, I think.
Thank you very much, Mas. And this leads us to our next question. I think that the attendee is asking, could you please give me an example of how this system works in an office manufacturing site that has different shifts? Can we go to Suresh and then we can move on to the other person?
So what we've done in terms of the device is to enable the device to be small and something which can be given to each individual employee. So once you come onto the site, it's within the infrastructure on the site that enables you to be located and also your co-workers to be located. So we're able then to have that data. So we can see that it's from this hour till that hour when you've been on the site, these are the people that you've interacted with, these are the locations which you've been in, and we can then look back at that data historically in the event of an outbreak. So if there is something that's happened, you can then be compared because we know a potential colleague has now been infected. We can see at what times would your paths have crossed, what is the risk that could be on you to also have that infection. And I think that the aim is not only to be able to inform people that they're under risk, but also to be able to make the companies aware in terms of how they can manage this better. So how they can make sure that you're not mixing everybody into the same areas, and you're trying to maintain good practice and good guidelines to minimize that risk of an infection. So potentially even a company could look at the data and say, well, what would happen if employee X actually had coronavirus? Who else in my company could have been infected? And then look back at that data and say, well, actually, if I changed the behavior of how we do things, could I limit that exposure? And how far could that be limited while still ensuring that we've got productivity in the workplace? Thank you.
Thank you. Denise, something to add to this one?
Nope.
Thank you. From my perspective, we have seen, so I used to work in a manufacturing company, and we work in shift. It was in the automotive industry. So I do agree with Suresh. I think that the clearer that you can make it to the employees, you have to be very good at what we did is that you have to plan very well who is going to be when, and to spread the skills. So if you have a specialist, you have certain specialists to be covering in different shifts. But you have to be very clear that sometimes you have to plan for the worst case scenario, because if one of the shifts got infected, it means that shift will go out of your radar for quite a while. So part of this implementation is talking to people. What we used to do a lot in the company that I used to work is that we have continuous communication, but communication not only between manager and manager or manager supervisor. We involve everybody down the different levels. You have different people representing different levels, and we have very clear idea of how you are going to operate. And this goes even a little bit more complicated, because you have the seasonable launch of kickoff of new products. And when you have these waves, your planning has to be tighter, and it has to be coming back to Denise, coming back to Masa, and coming back to Suresh. It's about planning and clear communication to everybody. So I think that we can take this system and implement it quite well, but it's about the communication and it's about the planning. And one thing that we observe with another digital projects that we observe when organizations that are implementing digital, when you implement digital, the base case scenarios that we have observed is when the technology is not left only to the digital department. It's when you bring together different people from production or from operations, from management, when you have a good spread of the different type of expertise, and you have a clear idea of where do you want it to go, and what is the key objective. And this is, we have seen it not only with this digital project, but we have seen it case after case. We need this mixture of expertise. And for example, here, we are here, and my panelists, they have different skills and we are working all together in the same project. I think that, and the same happened with the EPSRC project that I presented before with the wearable device to cure children's cancer. Is about bringing expertise, bringing different people together and communicate it for a common goal. Thank you for that. And we have the last question, and the last question is about people have too many things in their plate at the moment. Is there any way to minimize or to make this new addition of a new system for the employees to make this task easier for them to follow, to accept it, and to carry on? I see your face, Denise. Can we start with you, please?
That's a very good question and a very difficult question at the same time. I understand the question is that how can we make it easier for the individuals to cope with a new situation and with a technology, correct? That's what I understood. I think it's all about education, communication, and trust building. That's all I can recommend. So we need to educate the people from the kindergarten until to their working places. That's one thing. We have to communicate as representatives from the governmental point of view, from industry, in the societies. Then it comes to the communities. Maybe also we all have to communicate about this new time we are now living in, and also about how technology can help us with coping with this major challenge, I would say. And I think I forgot something. Okay, these two things will build trust in our society. And also one important thing I want to mention here is that we are now facing a major shift in our societies. So this is a big transformation we are in right now. And for this transformation, it's very, very important to build trust and to help our communities and societies to stay together and manage to go through this situation together with the help of new technologies, because these technologies are rising right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. I think that we are 3 minutes to finish, and I think that I would like to conclude, and to all of my panelists, let's leave it as it is. It was fantastic message: education, communication, adapt and trust to the transitions that we are embracing. This research has been already published. If you wanted to read more about all the article, the access is free. I would like to say thank you very much to everybody. If you want to know more about the webinar series that the IFM are organized, you can contact Peter. If you want to know more about this research or the project that I am leading about traceability, contact me. If you want to know more about the test, tag and trace, contact me, and I will reach all the team. Thank you very much to everybody, and stay safe. Thank you.